His lips brushed the side of my neck the moment the door clicked shut, and the office suddenly seemed far too small. The old desk lamp cast a golden circle over scattered spreadsheets and finance notes, but the glow didn't reach the far end of the room, where raindrops streaked across the frosted glass. I was pressed against the bookshelf before I could think. Breath caught somewhere between my ribs and throat. His hands warm against my waist, my palms braced against the polished wood behind me. The storm outside muffled the small sound I made when his mouth found Minea gasp. A plea, something breathless and foolish while the clock ticked 10, maybe 12 times before I remembered how to inhale. He smelled like rain-damp pavement and cheap peppermint gum, something young and sharp and unreasonably thrilling. And when he whispered, "Tell me if it's too much," the tremble in his voice echoed louder than the thunder outside. I didn't pull away. I tilted my head back, felt him press closer until the edge of a half-finished tax worksheet bit into my spine through the thin stack of papers. Every inch he took, I felt doubliance on my skin, and again in the pit of guilt twisting low and hot in my belly. "Keep going," I whispered, startled by the hunger in my own voice. He did. One hand slid beneath my sweater, palm flat against my stomach, heat blooming outward, scattering thought. The other braced against the wall, his knuckles white, like he was holding the room together while we both came undone. By the time I realized I'd already gone too far, I didn't want to go back. I'm 44. He's 23. My best friend's son. The boy who started tutoring me in accounting last fall, when I decided ridiculously to finish the degree I gave up for marriage, motherhood, and a mortgage. He was supposed to be safe. A sweet, harmless boy with a lopsided smile who showed up on Wednesday evenings with a backpack full of patience. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, explaining formulas I didn't understand, while I pretended not to notice the softness of his voice or the way he ran his fingers through his hair when he thought. But tonight wasn't Wednesday. Tonight, I texted him in a panic over a last-minute online assignment due at midnight. "I can stop by," he'd replied. I told myself it was innocent. Then I put on mascara I hadn't worn since last New Year's Eve and sprayed perfume just beneath my collarbone like I was baiting something I had no business hunting. It worked. We're both caught in it now. He pulls back an inch, searching my eyes for a permission I can't believe I'm giving. His breath fans over my cheek, and suddenly I'm aware of everything: the scrape of his jacket zipper against my hip, the distant rumble of thunder, the hum of the fridge down the hall, and the press of his body urging mine to open, to yield, to surrender. "Miss Adler," he says, voice cracking. "No," I breathe. "Not that." My married name feels obscene in his mouth. "Nora," he corrects, and the sound of it lands hard in my stomach, deep and electric. My hands find the edge of his t-shirt, fingers skimming over warm, impossibly smooth skin. He shudders, his forehead dropping to my shoulder, and I feel his pulse racing fast, uneven, echoing mine. The lamp flickers when lightning splits the sky, throwing our shadows against the wall in wild, distorted shapes. For one suspended breath, I see us for what we are: a woman who should know better, and a man who still believes desire is reason enough. "What are we doing?" he asks, voice raw, breaking. "Ruining something." "I don't know," I whisper. I don't know if I mean my friendship with his mother, his future, or the hollow marriage that waits upstairs like a closed door I haven't dared open in years. Maybe all of it. Maybe more. His fingers trail higher, tracing the curve beneath my ribs. I clutch his shoulders, my thumbs brushing the back of his neck, where the hair is soft and slightly damp. We sway slow, involuntary finding a rhythm that feels like confession turned into movement. My spine arches off the shelf, chasing more. He answers with a low sound I feel rather than hear, a vibration in his chest that settles deep in mine. Guilt floods me, but desire won't let me drown. It pulls me under, deeper, tighter, pressing me between polished wood and the weight of his body and the staggering truth that he wants me. Me whose husband hasn't kissed her like this in a decade. Me who wears oversized sweaters and calls it comfort, who fills her days with tasks to avoid the echo of what's missing. His mouth brushes along my jaw, hesitant, like he isn't sure he's allowed to savor me. I tilt my face toward him, kiss him again, deeper this time, answering the question he's too afraid to ask. The taste of peppermint and storm fills my mouth, and beneath it, something reckless and alive. A floorboard creaks down the hall, just the old house settling, but we both freeze. His hand stills beneath my sweater. My heart thuds once, twice, before returning to its wild rhythm. The risk hums in the air between us, louder than the storm. Anyone could see his car in the driveway. My husband could call. His mother-me friend could message to ask if he made it home before the rain got worse. What would they think? What would I do if the only person who's made me feel alive again is young enough to still believe in magic? The answer isn't in my head. It's in the heat pooling low in my stomach. It's in the way my fingers slide up his back, pulling him closer instead of pushing him away. Lightning flashes again. Tell me to stop, he whispers. I don't. I bite my lip, taste copper, and nod once permission, surrender, I don't know. He lifts me, arms steady, carrying me across the room with a gentleness that undoes me more than roughness ever could. The couch, weight shaft covered in textbooks and notes, but he moves them aside with one hand, the other cradling me as if I might break. The leather sighs beneath us when he lays me down. The space between us disappears. He settles over me, careful, and I arch to meet him. Our breaths come in stutters, uneven and urgent. When he presses closer, I feel the length of him against me. The reality of him and a sound escapes me that I've never made for anyone else. We move slowly, uncertain at first, learning each other in pieces. Every shift, every breath, every inch is electric. My fingers tangle in his hair. His hands find the small of my back, lifting, guiding, coaxing my body to remember what it once loved and long ago forgot. Outside, the rain falls harder, as if the sky wants to join us in this reckless moment. Inside, we cling to each other like we're afraid the world will break apart if we let go. And somewhere in the quiet between lightning strikes, I realize the line I swore I'd never cross is gone. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the way he says my name, the tremble in his arms, the way my legs tighten around him when he moves just a little deeper, a little slower, until I shatter beneath him only breathless, stolen second at a time. When it's over, neither of us moves. His heartbeat thrums against my chest, wild and unsteady. Our clothes are half on, half off for reason the same. He lifts his head. There's wonder in his eyes. And fear. I smooth a shaking hand along his jaw. We can't stay here, I whisper. But neither of us reaches for our clothes. Neither of us checks the window. We just stay still, breathing each other in, pretending the rest of the world doesn't exist, at least for 1 minute more. And deep inside, I know this isn't something I'll regret and erase. It's the start of something I might never survive and can't bring myself to give up. Friday mornings always begin the same. I'm up before the sun, moving through the house like a ghost, careful not to wake anyone. The grind of the coffee beans feels too loud in the still kitchen. So I press the button in short bursts, waiting between pulses like I'm listening for footsteps. The house is hollow at that hour, just the hum of the refrigerator and the quiet creak of old wooden floors. I still set 2 mugs on the counter, out of habit though Mark hasn't touched the second one in months. He usually grabs a protein bar, mutters something about time, and heads to the gym without looking back. From the kitchen window, I watch his car roll down the lane and vanish. Then I pour the untouched cup of coffee down the sink. The rest of the day is a loop of routines. Virtual lectures for the degree I started again after 20 years, grocery lists, school pickups, laundry, emails. I've built a life made entirely of necessary things, where I'm too useful to ignore, but never important enough to notice. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, that's when the silence feels thinner, like it's waiting to tear. I met Leo last summer during a neighborhood barbecue at his mother's place. He'd just finished his 3rd year in architecture. His grin stretched too wide, his hair was sun-warmed and a little wild. He offered to help me carry folding chairs inside. We got to talking about city zoning, of all things, and when I mentioned the statistics course I'd just enrolled in, he laughed and said, "Call me if you get stuck. I'm cheap, and I work for food." I'd laughed, too. I shouldn't have. A week later, I did call him. Confidence intervals had me in tears at the kitchen table. He arrived with a laptop and a Red Bull, wearing scuffed sneakers and that grin that made you feel like the sun had come out just for you. At first, we worked in the dining room. He'd lean over my shoulder, explaining things in a low voice, slow and patient. He always smelled faintly of mint and soap. He never rushed me, not once. Mark would pass through once, maybe twice. He'd pat Leo on the back, call him champ, say something about finally getting me to enjoy math. I'd smile and nod, like that was all it was. But it wasn't. The shift was slow. So slow I pretended not to see it. One week, the sleeves of his hoodie brushed my arm as we hovered over a graph, and I felt the spark like static under my skin. A few days later, I noticed him watching me adjust the collar of my blousand. Something in me pulled tight. Then came the rain. It had started just as he arrived. I opened the door and his hair was damp, raindrops clinging to his hoodie. I offered him a towel from the hallway closet, and when I handed it over, our fingers touched. Just for a second. But it was long enough. "Thanks, Nora," he said soft. Like it meant something. My name had never sounded like that before. After that, I couldn't pretend I didn't see it anymore. The way he looked at me when I laughed too hard, the way he waited, always, just a little too long to leave. The way he really listened when I talked about things I didn't tell anyone else. I told myself it was harmless, that nothing had happened, that the ache I felt when he walked out the door was just loneliness, not desire, that it would fade. But every Tuesday and Thursday, it got worse. One night, the heater in the dining room broke, and we moved to the kitchen. I made tea while he set up his notes under the soft yellow glow of the microwave light. We talked about climate data and curve graphs. We laughed too loud. When I handed him a mug, our fingers touched again. His hand lingered on the ceramic just a little too long. I watched a drop of water slide from his temple down to his jaw and wanted to trace it with my tongue. He never made the first move. Not once. He waited for me to close the space. He spoke quieter when we were alone. He looked at me like I was something rare. I remember the moment I cracked. I had just told him about Mark missing my birthday dinner. I didn't cry, but my voice wavered, and I looked away. He leaned forward and said, "You deserve more than that. Nothing else. No pressure. Just that." It hit me harder than any kiss. When he left that night, I lingered at the door after it closed. The house felt colder, emptier. I stood there breathing in the last of his scent, ashamed of how long I stayed still. Later, in bed, I reread our text messages. I typed a dozen things I never sent. And when the storm hit, when the power flickered and the house shook, I told myself I just needed help with my assignment. But it wasn't about numbers. It hadn't been for a long time. The next morning, everything felt sharper. The light too bright, the silence too deep. I stood in the kitchen folding dish towels, my hands moving automatically crease. Fold, stack while my mind played back the night before like a loop I couldn't stop. The sound of his breath, the flicker of lightning across his face, the way the leather couch creaked beneath us when we moved. I told myself it was a mistake. Just one night, a break in a weak moment. I told myself I would forget it, lock it in a box somewhere, and throw away the key. But it didn't feel like one night. It felt like a thread unraveling, and I couldn't stop pulling at it. Mark came downstairs, a little after 7, still half asleep, scrolling the news on his phone as he mumbled for coffee. I poured it. He didn't look at me, just said thanks and sat at the kitchen island, sipping and reading like nothing had changed. Maybe for him, nothing had, but everything had. Leo's notebook was still there, left behind in our rush. A single page with hand-drawn charts and scribbled formulas peeked out from the folder. I slid it into my own stack like it was contraband, my heart hammering in my chest. I told myself I'd text him to return it. I told myself the conversation would stay strictly academic. But when my phone buzzed in my pocket, I didn't wait for logic. It was him. Just a single message. No words. Only a question mark. I closed my eyes, exhaled, and felt the ache rise in my throat again. That week, I didn't see him. No tutoring sessions, no unexpected texts. I assumed he was giving me space, or maybe he'd come to his senses, filed it away as a foolish mistake, and moved on. I hoped he had, but a deeper part of me, a darker one, hoped he hadn't. When he finally did come back, it was late Tuesday afternoon. I heard the knock and my stomach dropped. It was soft, careful, one knock only. I opened the door, and there he was, like nothing had changed. Thought we could finish that chapter you skipped, he said, like we hadn't crossed a line we couldn't uncross. I should have said no. I should have shut the door. Instead, I stepped aside. You left your notes, I murmured, not quite looking at him. He nodded, eyes scanning the room like it was unfamiliar now. He didn't touch me, didn't even get close, but the air buzzed between us anyway, charged with everything we didn't say. We sat at the kitchen island, 2 laptops open, his mug untouched, mine growing cold. We tried to work. I asked him questions I already knew the answers to, just to hear his voice. He answered slowly, quieter than usual, like he was afraid anything louder would shatter the room. Sometimes I'd catch him glancing at meat, my hands, my mouth, my collarbone. I wore a thick sweater, no makeup, my hair pulled back in a hasty knot. Still, he looked at me like I was something worth pausing for. Halfway through the session, I dropped a pen. We both reached for it at the same time, and our shoulders collided beneath the counter. Brief, barely anything, but it jolted something in me. I laughed. Guess I forgot how to bend down. He smiled a little tight. Guess I should have let you get it. We sat back up, but this time our knees stayed touching. Barely, but there, present. The numbers on the screen blurred. I couldn't focus. Every nerve in my body was too aware of the place where his leg brushed mine. Then his finger brushed the side of my hand. Just once. Just enough. I shouldn't stay too long, he said, though he didn't move. I stared at the mug. You haven't finished your tea. You haven't touched yours either. The clock on the microwave ticked, loud and mechanical. I didn't look up. I didn't think you'd come back. I didn't either, he said, and the words sounded older than him. A long pause. He was watching me again. I could feel it. You regret it? I asked, almost too quietly. His answer took too long. I don't know, he said. Do you? That should have been the end of it. A confession. A boundary redrawn. But instead, I shifted barely and our knees aligned fully. I regret what it means, I whispered. Not what it was. He nodded. Yeah, me too. We didn't touch again. We didn't kiss. We just sat there in that strange space between guilt and want, pretending to read through sample sets, while something in the air wound tighter and tighter around us. Later, at the door, he paused. I don't want to mess up your life, he said. I almost laughed. It's already a mess. You just noticed. He stood under the porch light, one hand on the frame. I won't make the first move again, he said. I promise. I nodded. But the problem was never his moves. It was mine. The next week, he came over again. This time, I offered him wine. A small glass, something red and dry, just enough to feel like we weren't pretending this was still about school. Rough week? He asked as he sat on the couch. I nodded, curling my legs beneath me. Just one glass, just to take the edge off. We didn't sit at the kitchen island this time. The textbook stayed closed. The hallway light was off. The television was on, but muted. The only glow came from the screen, casting a soft shimmer across his jaw and the curve of his cheekbone. He laughed at something I said, and I laughed too, but then neither of us looked away. Do you ever feel like you're not supposed to want what you want? I asked, voice thinner than I meant. His eyes darkened slightly. All the time, he murmured, especially here. Silence stretched between us, the kind that didn't want to be filled. We weren't touching, not yet, but we didn't need to. We were already kissing in every space, but literal in the pauses between sentences, in the way our eyes lingered, in the way we breathed slower when the other spoke. When he finally stood to leave, I almost didn't let him go. My body leaned forward, instinctively, then stopped. He caught it. We both did. Good night, I whispered. He gave me a long look. You sure? No, but I nodded anyway. That night, I dreamed of him not in vivid detail, but in flickers. The warmth of his hand on my knee, the way his breath curved near my shoulder. I woke with the weight of him still in my skin. It was no longer a slow slide. It was a free fall, and I'd opened my eyes the whole way down. It happened again on a Friday night. The house was too quiet. Mark was gone off at a retreat with his fitness clue band. The girls were sleeping over at their cousins'. I had hours of silence stretched in front of me like a blank page. I didn't plan it. I didn't even call. He showed up anyway. He knocked once. Soft. I opened the door in an old cardigan and a tank top, hoping it looked casual instead of calculated. He stood in the entryway like he belonged there, like he'd never left. No one else home? He asked. I shook my head. Not tonight. We didn't speak after that. Not for a long time. I moved toward the kitchen. He followed. My fingers brushed the edge of the counter to steady myself. He came to stand behind me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel his breath at the back of my neck. "You sure you want this?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. I just turned and reached for him. The kiss was fast, hot, nervous. It felt like all the ones we hadn't let ourselves have, crashing into one breathless moment. His hand slid up my back, mine tangled in his shirt, and the counter dug into my spine, anchoring me to the present. His mouth moved down my throat, stopping only when I gasped, like he was waiting to be told no. I didn't stop him. The light over the stove glowed soft and golden, flickering on the silver of his necklace, the outline of his shoulder. His hands were careful, reverent, sliding beneath the hem of my cardigan, fingers splayed wide across my ribs. I could smell the rain beginning outside. That same scent from the first night, wet concrete, pine, and something electric. He moved like he was unwrapping something fragile, like I might break if he touched too hard. But that wasn't what scared me. What scared me was how gently he knew to press, how patient he was. When he traced the base of my spine with his thumb, I shivered all over. I leaned my forehead into his shoulder, and for a long moment we didn't move. It wasn't a race. It was an unraveling, a slow descent into something inevitable. When we finally gave in, it was quiet. No loud breaths or breaking furniture. Just the hush of skin against skin, the faint clink of his belt buckle against the cabinet, the sigh of his shirt as I pulled it free. We didn't make it to the bedroom. There wasn't time. There wasn't a need. It all happened right there under the yellow light, between the refrigerator's hum and the rattle of branches against the window pane. We didn't take everything off. Just enough. Enough to feel everything. It was messy. It was real. After, he helped me pull my sweater down. I smoothed his collar. We didn't look at each other for a few long seconds. Then I whispered what neither of us wanted to hear. "You should go." He nodded. "Yeah." But he didn't move right away. One hand still hovered at my hip. "You didn't have to let me," he said, almost too soft to hear. "I know." I swallowed. "That's the part that scares me." He stepped back, ran a hand through his hair, and paused at the door like he might turn around. He didn't. When the door clicked shut, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood in the silence, pressed my fingers to my lips, still tasting the salt of skin and rain. And I thought, this is the moment everything changes. The morning after, I stood in the laundry room, folding towels like it mattered, like the way I stacked fabric could fix the shape of my life. The dryer spun behind me, a low mechanical hum that echoed the silence still ringing in my ears. My hands moved without thought crease, fold, smooth, repeat. But my mind refused to cooperate. It kept drifting back to the feel of his body, the heat of his breath, the rain tapping softly at the window as the world outside carried on, unaware. I told myself again that it was just one night, that it didn't mean anything, that it couldn't happen again. But none of those things were true. It did mean something, and it had already happened again. 3 days later, he was at my front door only this time, not alone. He came with his mother, my oldest friend, for a casual drop-in, just to say hello, to catch up. She brought a box of lemon bars and 2 bottles of cheap wine. He brought silence and danger, cloaked in a too-casual hoodie and the ghost of memory on his skin. Maybe for him, it was already buried. Just a moment, a lapse. a thrill he could file away under youthful mistakes. Maybe to him, it didn't mean everything, but it had never left me. He didn't look at me directly, but he didn't avoid me either. He was present, too present, like a secret vibrating in the middle of the room that no one else could hear. I dropped a glass at dinner. The clang of it hitting the floor made everyone flinch. Everyone but him. He just watched. Later, I spilled water on my lap. No one noticed except him. He reached across the table, handed me a napkin without a word. Our fingers brushed, barely, but it was enough. Enough to remind me what it felt like. Enough to make heat crawl up my chest. That night, I lay in bed next to Mark. His body was turned away from me, one arm flung over the edge of the bed, snoring softly. He hadn't touched me in weeks, maybe longer. And now, even his nearness felt foreign. Wrong. I turned onto my side and stared at the shadows on the wall until morning. Guilt didn't strike like lightning. It arrived like fog, slow, steady, unshakable. It settled into my bones and made everything quiet. I started avoiding places where I might see Leo. I skipped neighborhood events, declined lunch invites. I said I had deadlines, a cold, errands, anything that meant I didn't have to be near him. Because I didn't want to be near him. And I didn't want to not be near him either. That was the worst part. Every time someone said his name, my heart stuttered. Every time my phone buzzed, I checked before I could stop myself. And when it was him, my hands trembled. "Are you okay?" the message said. Just that. I typed 10 replies, deleted them all. Eventually, I wrote, "No, but I will be." I never hit send. 2 days later, I ran into him anyway. Pure accident. I was walking out of the market with a bag of groceries clutched in both arms. He was heading in, earbuds in, hoodie up, looking like someone who didn't know he'd been occupying someone else's mind for days. We stopped inches from each other, the automatic doors opening and closing behind us like breath. "Hey," he said. I nodded. "Hi." There was a beat of silence. Too many thoughts crowding the air to speak. "Can we talk?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not here." He looked down, scuffing his sneaker against the mat. "I didn't mean to mess things up." "You didn't," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I did that on my own." He reached out, touched my elbow gently. I flinched not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Because it felt like comfort. Because it felt like temptation. "I keep thinking about that night," he said quietly. "Not just that. Everything. You. The way you looked at me like I wasn't a mistake." "Stop," I whispered, eyes closing. "Please." "I can't," he said. "Can you?" I couldn't answer. I didn't have to. Because the truth was, I'd replayed it all. Every second, every breath, every quiet gasp in the dark, until the memory blurred into something I couldn't tell apart from the present. He didn't try to touch me again. He just looked at me like he already knew the answer. When I got home, I put the groceries away in silence. Then I stood in the doorway of the study, the place where everything started, and stared at the bookshelf, the couch, the desk lamp. The room still smelled faintly like him. And I realized something that terrified me more than the guilt, more than the fear of being caught. I wasn't sorry. Not really. It's easy to pretend nothing ever happened when the sun is out, the house is noisy, and your hands are full. It's easy when you're loading laundry, packing school lunches, nodding along to meetings with your camera off. But then night falls, and the quiet returns. That's when pretending becomes impossible. He didn't come over that week. I told myself it was for the best, that he was being careful, that maybe he felt the shame I couldn't seem to summon properly. Maybe he was trying to let me forget. But I didn't want to forget, and deep down, I didn't want him to let me. When he did finally show up again, it was 2 weeks later. He didn't text, didn't warn me, just knocked low and slow like a question. I opened the door, already knowing I wouldn't say no. He stepped inside like nothing had passed between us, except everything had. This time, we didn't speak. Not at first. I moved to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water like it was routine, like this was still innocent. But when I turned, he was watching me the way he always did now eyes, slow, unreadable, patient. "You don't have to do this," I said quietly, though we both knew I was speaking to myself. "I know," he replied, even quieter. We sat at the edge of the couch. The distance between us was barely anything, just air, and still it felt dangerous. I turned to say something, maybe to pull us back into conversation, into safety, but he leaned in first. This kiss was different. Not hurried, not panicked, not like we were trying to silence guilt. It was soft, exploratory, like he was memorizing the shape of my mouth, the hesitation in my breath, the weight of yes in my silence. He kissed like someone who had waited long enough, who didn't want to rush this time. And I let him. His hand slid along my jaw, then down my neck, settling just above my collarbone. His touch was warm, familiar now, but it still made me shiver. I leaned into him, letting my body answer for me. We didn't speak for a long time. The only sounds were the soft rustle of clothing, the shifting of cushions, the muted hum of the fridge. And when he finally pulled back, just enough to breathe, I whispered, "This can't go on." "I know," he said, but he didn't move. Neither did I. And that was the problem. It wasn't just what we did. It was what we didn't undo. That night, when he left, we didn't touch again. No goodbye kiss. No last glance. Just a slow pull away. Still, I didn't sleep. My body ached for him in ways I didn't understand. Not just physically, not lust, not even guilt. It was something else, something deeper. The craving to be seen, to be wanted not as a wife or a mother or a reliable presence, but as a woman, as someone worth lingering for. That's what he gave me, without words, without promises. And I didn't know how to live without it anymore. Days passed. I returned to routine. But nothing fit right. Conversations with Mark were thinner than usual. His touches when they came felt obligatory. His apologies for being distant sounded like weather reports, factual, forgettable. I started walking more. Long evening walks through the neighborhood. Past his mother's house. Past the park where he used to skateboard as a kid. Past memories I never meant to gather. One night, I saw him across the street, getting out of his car. Our eyes met briefly, and I looked away first. I could still feel it, though the weight of his gaze. Later that night, I got another message. Just 2 words. "Still here?" I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. It stayed in my inbox, quiet and dangerous, like a match waiting for a hand. Eventually, I had to admit something to myself. This was no longer about a mistake. It was a fracture. And what had slipped through it wasn't just lust or longing. It was me, the version of myself I hadn't seen in over a decade, the one who still wanted, who still felt, who still ached for more than grocery lists and polite conversations. He hadn't created that version. He just made me remember she was still buried inside. And now that I had seen her again, I couldn't go back to forgetting. I knew how this ended. Not in a big fight. Not in some dramatic discovery. Not with yelling or slam doors. It would end slowly. In silence. In looks we didn't allow ourselves. In texts we didn't send. In all the ways we stopped reaching for each other. Until the air between us turned still and final. But even when it ended, the truth would remain. Someone saw me once and didn't turn away. Someone looked at me and didn't just see a wife, or a mother, or a woman who'd given up her dreams for safe choices. He saw me, all of me, and I didn't look away either.